one of the first impressions that you make on a new reader is your introduction. And I believe that having a great introduction can absolutely set the tone for the reader's experience from the minute they pick up the book all the way through the entirety of reading the book. And so I want to share with you how and what you need to include to create a really great introduction for a nonfiction book. Now, I believe that there are really three questions that you will want to answer to make a great introduction. Now, I read a lot of books, and I know that a great introduction for me can really help me understand the author, can really help me understand who the author is, can really help me understand like what I'm going to be learning throughout the book. And so I want to break these down step by step so that when you go ahead and you write your introduction, you can have these three things in mind so that you can write the best introduction, which will lead to the best book, which will lead to the best experience, which will ultimately lead to the reader taking more action and getting more results, which, if you're watching this video, it's something that you probably want to achieve as an author yourself. All right, so the first thing that you want to include in your introduction of a nonfiction book is the solution to this question. What is the problem you are going to be solving in this book? And the way that you can kind of think about this is, what is the reader struggling with? Give an example of how you actually understand them. Okay, so I was reading a real estate book, and in the introduction of this book, the author gave an example of this couple who did what most people do, and they gave this whole example, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's me, that's me, that's me. And so by doing that, the author really captured my attention, and I felt that he really understood where I was at. You can do the same thing. Understand and show the reader that you understand their problems. Another way to think about this is, what are some of the common feelings or beliefs someone might have who picked up your book? So what are they struggling with? What are they feeling? What have they experienced? And if you can speak to that, you'll immediately make them feel that they're reading this book for themselves, that you wrote it for them. And so this is one of the three main things that I think really makes for a great introduction in a nonfiction book. What is the problem? Solve that and address that so the reader feels connected to you. The second thing is, once you've addressed the problem, well, why are you the person to solve this problem, right? Why should somebody listen to you, essentially, okay? And so when you're starting to answer this, start to think about, what is your story? What are your credentials? What have you done that make you credible to share this? What do you know that can help somebody? This may be your expertise. This may be that you've been in the profession that you're in for the last 20 years. This may be that you did a 3-year research study. What do you know that can help someone? And then, of course, what is your transformation? Not every great book is super scientific or based on years and years of research and experience. Sometimes these books that are really, really great are based on a personal transformation. What happened to you? One of our clients, he wrote a book. He was a VP and an investment banker, and he went on a spiritual adventure, and that was his book. And so for him, it was telling him the transformation, who he was, where he got to, and those were the credentials that allowed people to say, wow, I really want to learn more about this book. And then the third part that is going to make a really, really great introduction is, what can the reader expect? Now, I like to give things pretty straightforward. So when I do introductions, I'll tell the reader exactly how the book is going to be broken down. If you are writing a book with multiple parts, let them know what the parts are. If you are writing a book with a roadmap, give them an insight into how we're going to break down the roadmap. Dr. Joe Dispenza does this in several of his books. I was just reading one of them, and he said, look, in the introduction, he said, look, you're going to learn this in part 1, you're going to learn this in part 2, and you're going to learn this in part 3. And what that does is it sets the tone for that reader as they're going through it. So the three things that I believe make for an incredible introduction to a nonfiction book is, number 1, what is the problem? Number 2, why are you the person to solve the problem? And number 3, what can the reader to expect? And if you do those three things, you're going to connect with the reader right off the bat. You're going to establish yourself as a credible figure, and you're going to give them an expectation so that they know what's to come. And here's the craziest thing, okay? Here's the craziest thing. When you tell people these things, you're giving them a choice at that moment in time to continue or not to continue. And that's a beautiful thing to give that reader that choice, because now the reader's not going to waste any more time if it's not for them. Or they're going to double down because they're like, oh yes, I'm excited. This is the book for me. So whatever direction the reader chooses, it's your job to provide the reader with an incredible introduction and answer the questions. What is the problem that you're solving? Why are you the person to solve that problem? And what can the reader expect? And if you do that, you're going to have an incredible introduction to writing a nonfiction book.